I got. All right. Boom. We are live.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. And welcome back to another episode of Take a Knee with Captain Norm, Mike Norm Wallace. How do you guys properly refer to each other?
It's kind of a strange thing in our previous line of work, or my previous line of work, right?
Yeah.
Call signs are a strange thing. You get to know everybody by
well,
that.
you guys keep up with it for a long time, afterwards.
Well, it's a lifetime. In fact, many squadrons that I was a part of, you actually would have to designate a day during the week that you utilize first names, just so you could actually, know people's first names, like First Name Tuesday or whatever. If you're going to go on the flight schedule, and you just brief by everybody's first name, it's really awkward. I've done that in the past. Well, it's kind of a fun way to lighten it up a little bit.
Well, I mean, that is funny because I remember when I was with the Air Force squadrons, as the Army guy, they're all using the call signs.
Yeah.
So that kind of, there was no rank when you're just doing call signs.
Yeah, you just throw it out.
But then I found out, then they're also just using first names anyways. There was the respect for the rank, but I found that very interesting. And then, of course, if you're thinking about the civilian environment, one of the struggles we have is, not having those uniforms and those ranks to default hierarchy to. And yes, you are supposed to call your boss Jim or Mike or whatever, usually, right? You're not calling him Sir or Mr. Johnson anymore. So that's another aspect of, that's, I don't know if there's a training for that part of the transition, or if it's just something you got to kind of find your own way around.
Navigating that new space, right? And having access to those individuals who have gone before you, like we do here in the Blue Water Network, right? And just being able to have those conversations going, hey, tell me what's different about your environment today than what it was yesterday, right? I mean, how have you navigated that? So,
lots of good stuff. For me, I assumed hierarchy to individuals just because of their prior experience, and that's not necessarily how it works in the civilian world. So, it's more about you can actually look at results. And judge people that way. But all right. So for today's kind of theme, I know you had a common scenario come up that you wanted to share and talk about. But before we get into that, just wanted to quickly show you guys some updates because this show here is brought to you by the Military Retirement Blueprint, and we've been updating the site a lot. And nice. So we got a new updated page. So easy access when you click choose a plan. I set it up here so that depending on where you are in your career, you get access to our most relevant information. Once you're inside, you can get access to everything, of course. But there's some particular sets of resources for those that are still on active duty or in the reserves before they retire. And then those that have already retired, they're going to be more useful.
Hey, you just got to keep me up to speed. And for the listeners out there, every time Scott is updating his site, I got to make sure all the backlinks are updated as well, too, that go to your page. So
Well, anybody coming from the Blue Water page has a special link.
Okay. That hasn't changed.
This is just for anybody stumbling into our video and want to get access to more resource, realizing that, hey, we're looking at military retirement from a unique perspective for a unique audience. It's really, those who find us are really part of the 1% of retirees. If you think of every retiree out there, there's, one or two guys in the room saying, hey, something here that they're just saying, everybody do this, something about this, I've heard something different from a buddy. And where do I go to get kind of more, hey, I'm a senior officer, I'm a senior NCO. I realize a lot of this transition content is designed for the masses. And not necessarily for career retirees who still have a lot of responsibility and are a little bit older in life. So situations are very different than the mass of the information. That's what this show's about. That's what Blue Water is doing differently for their members. And then when it comes to the finance side of it, that's what this education is designed for. And then if you want to work with us at US VetWealth to implement some of the solutions, we can always talk about that. But
the audience is perfectly aligned, right? With
right.
the services that you bring and how you tailor that. And then, the typical Blue Water member.
It'll be useful for anybody who's related to the military. There's going to be something in here, but we've designed the content for those senior retirees who are like, all right, I haven't had a chance to look at this stuff in a while, or I'm kind of surprised about something at retirement I wasn't expecting, whether that's negotiating salaries earlier than I was expecting in this process, or it's, getting life insurance, so a lot of things come up. They all are little extra stressors. Mike and I have designed our programs to reduce the stress at the end of the day. Not that it's not going to be stressful, but sometimes there's things you don't have to get hung up on. And so absolutely. I know that that was what you want to chat about today, Mike. So I'll let you kind of warm us up.
Well, I mean, just to kind of kick it off, right? I mean, I had an interesting email the other day, and it was from an attendee to a cohort not long ago. In fact, I don't think she would care if I shared this insight, but from our recent cohort at Annapolis, right? And she had been pursuing, right, a number of options and just doing incredibly well in her career progression, right? Was prepared, was researching, was assessing those good fits, had identified a number of these good fits, had assessed them as a good fit, both quantitatively, qualitatively. And, there's a process for members that come to us on how to assess these good fits. And we walk members through that. And she had done all of that. And got an email from her the other day, and she just said, hey, I just want you to know this pursuit of mine has come back to me, and it looks like they're either moving in another direction or, they're not going to pursue me for making this fill. And, I immediately just, when I get emails like this, Scott, I immediately just come back because, the seniority of our audience, right? I mean, if you take a look just analytically at who walks through our doors, we're not used to, in most cases, hearing no or no thank you, right? And it's the audience that walks through our door. Think about it. We're still 56, 57% 06s, which in the Navy world, post-major command 06 is about another 20 to 25% 05s. And those analytics change quarter to quarter a little bit. But by and large, that's math in public. So whatever that is, 80% of our makeup, right, is that very senior leadership. And we just inherently have been jumping hurdles and moving to that next success level. And what it's like to be on that treadmill, right?
It's kind of what I was referring to earlier. It's like, exactly. If you're going to get promoted.
Exactly. And so when you step into your career progression and you put your shoulder in something, it's a little bit, of just an assumption, right? That, hey, I'm going to step up and these guys are going to love me and they're going to hire me on the spot. And when you get this, hey, we really appreciate you making the time, but we think we're going to move in another direction. Man, that really takes the wind out of our member sales, right? And in this case, you could just almost like, I can't believe that they're going to move in another direction, right? And so I quickly jump on and just say, hey, listen, and just for the listeners out there and the members, everybody hears no. And it may be no for a number of reasons that have absolutely nothing to do with the skills and the pedigree of who you are and what you're bringing to the table. It might be no because they don't have the budget for it. It might be no because of a number of reasons that you just don't understand, right? The why behind it. And so I quickly just reinforce to members, right, that, keep your shoulder into it. Don't lose your mind. Don't lose, focus on how far you've come. And really, the most important thing you should remember at this point is that, hey, they have been interested in you up until this point. They have engaged you up until this point. They have interviewed you up until this point. So you're already, right, in a grouping of just kind of a 1 or 2% of individuals who have made it that far, right? The second thing that I just reinforced to members in that situation is never burn that bridge. Never, just pick up some kind of and I'll say, maybe this is a little bit stronger word, a negative attitude, right? Like, hey, stay positive. All those individuals you met along the way in that regard are now part of your network. Stay engaged with them, and recognize that you have no idea what the future holds. Maybe funding does get resolved. Maybe these issues that led to them not being able to take you aboard at that time get resolved 4 or 5 months down the road. I cannot tell you the number of individuals that have been told no, and then some period of time later, individuals circle back to them and say, hey, we want to talk to you again. And in fact, my own personal story, right? I mean, while this was initially me telling Amazon no thank you early on for a position that I didn't really know a lot about it, they eventually came back and we had another conversation that led to a hiring action, right? So you just don't know what the future holds, right? So I turn it into a positive. I say, hey, congratulations for making it that far. Congratulations for being in the top 1% of people that this company is considering. The fact that they may have told you no, I get it, but don't read too much into that. We want to internalize that and make it all about me, when in fact, behind the curtain, it may not have anything to do with you. Maybe there's no funding. Maybe it's just not a right time. Maybe the position the company was going to go just went away, right? Yeah. Maybe they were going to hire you for a certain amount of work and then they didn't win the work. It may not have anything at all to do with you. So stay positive, keep your shoulder into it. And the biggest takeaway is get back into the hunt. You're current, right? You're relevant. You're credible at that point. You're up to speed. You know how to research companies. You know how to have these conversations. Don't stop, right? Don't delay, right? Just jump right back into it. Does that make sense? And I'll kind of pause there for a second.
Yeah. Sorry, I my internet went out, but the recording should have kept going. So
yeah, we noted that, but I just kept talking. I figured you'd get back in. So
no, that's just for future reference. The way this is set up, you can keep going if I drop out. And I don't know if this is what's gone on. The last couple of weeks, my internet's been jumpy, so I might actually finally have to deal with this.
And we got all kinds of storms, and again, my heart goes out to the guys down in Florida right now, right? In fact, today, I think this storm is going to make landfall. So
it's coming in.
Everybody down there, be careful. Be careful. Yeah.
Definitely looks serious considering, it's on the tail end of the one that just came through. But no, but I was, I was going to ask because, there's just so much out of your control. And I like, because of the situation I'm in, I've been self-employed since I got out. I never actually went through a traditional job offer process, but I got recruited into firms. So it felt like I was getting hired in a way. Sure. Yeah. But then I eventually realized that when I was getting customers, like each one was its own individual job offer. Right. I had to do interviews. I had to give my resume, which is, some version of explaining the value I offered. And, sometimes they say no or not even respond or, whatever. There's lots of, and when you're in the sales business, you got to get used to no's or whatever. And sometimes they're more like hard no's. And then you're like, whoa, okay, that's a learning experience.
Sure.
But either way, and then sometimes you just get ghosted.
Yeah.
And what you have to just realize is like this one thing is just one of many things going on from their end. And maybe it's about me or not, that's completely irrelevant. Either way, if it didn't work out, it didn't work out for a reason, it's better not to try to force it to work out. That's the other
Sure.
problem with the sales business. You're just trying to make the sale. It's like, no. It's better, I've learned at least,
Yeah.
if for whatever reason there was
If
something
it's a
that
good
said no
fit, it's a good
early
fit.
on.
Yeah.
But then a lot of times people have come back to me a year or two later, and I've gotten hired in a sense.
Yeah.
And why, that's what you're staying involved in the network, having lots of
you just don't know what the future is going to bring, right?
I mean, keeping those opportunities open, have a lot of coals in the fire.
You're absolutely right. And I think, again, just to drive it home, a frustration for a lot of our members is, okay, well, you told me no, I'm going to go back to the group I was engaged with. Hey, please share some insight, right? Can you please tell me, what I need to work on, and you're asking for feedback, if you will. And what I would just share with the members is, more often than not, you're likely not to get any kind of feedback, right? HR departments, right? Whatever the reasoning is behind this, there's, and I'll phrase it like this, maybe an assumption of a little bit of a risk if a company goes back to you and says why we didn't hire you, right? You're likely just, hey, stay in touch with us. We'll talk, let you know if there's any future openings or whatever. You're probably going to get something, moot like that, right?
Yeah.
But again, I just want to reinforce, having been on the hiring side, members, I can almost promise you don't have 2020 vision into the why behind you not getting, asked aboard, right? I mean, there's just so many variables, Scott. And just like you pointed out, right, it may not have anything to do with you. It just may be a timing thing. It may be a money thing. You just don't know what it is, right?
What about thinking about it from just getting reps in? Like, rather than expecting
absolutely.
Yeah. Scott, rather than expecting feedback from anybody that's going to be genuine and useful, the more times you have going through these experiences, then you can kind of develop your own feedback. Oh, that went a little different this time.
Listen, Scott, reps and sets, man. It's all about reps and sets, right? I mean, get out there, have these conversations, put yourself in that awkward environment. Wow, I'm not in control of this conversation. I'm not the one asking the questions. I don't get to say when the meeting starts and when it's over. I'm on this side of the table. People are asking me questions. They're assessing my responses, right? And they get to say, the makeup, the agenda, and everything. Again, for the pedigree of our members here at Blue Water, that is a unique environment in most cases. Most of our members are so senior, they're used to driving those kind of engagements, right?
Yeah.
And so this is a little bit, okay, I've got to take a step back. I'm stepping into this environment now, right? So.
Okay, so one of the areas where I think you can at least add some power back onto your side of the table is what you're saying is early on in these conversations, sometimes the compensation thing is going to come up just to get it on the table. And because that is, at the end of the day, it's all going to be about, will you come on, will we hire you for this amount of money? And so just getting a ballpark and being comfortable around that maybe helps with some of the uncomfortableness of the rest of the situation, because it's always just going to be hanging out there. And then sometimes people get surprised when they're asked the question.
Often they get surprised.
Where does, this, how do we handle that part of the conversation so it doesn't derail the rest of it?
No, and that was at the heart of kind of what you and I wanted to talk about here today. And let me just plant the seed with you. The next video workshop that we do, and maybe we'll have a few gems that we can pull out of this discussion, is a video tutorial for our members on how to prep accordingly for discussions centered around compensation, right? And we reinforce this in our day-long cohorts. We tell our members, Every single cohort. In fact, if Steve Weeman was here, he would echo this. Dave Wadelick has sit through, John Malfitano, Brian Herdlick, all the guys. We reinforce this to our members. We say, the second you start doing your market analysis on the number of companies that you may be interested in, and you're starting to qualitatively, quantitatively assess these options, starting to understand what may be a good fit, and you start to kind of narrow that list down of, an infinite number of possibilities down into 3 or 4 pursuits, you have got to get busy right then and there on saying, okay, what can these companies afford to compensate me for a typical role and responsibility that I might be interested in this geographic area? Now, I'm going to back up and say that again slower, because words are important when we talk about this. I tell all of our members their worth, their value. Every single member that walks through the Blue Water door, you're worth a gajillion dollars a year. There's no doubt in my former military mind that is your value. I've worked with these people. I understand what they're capable of doing. I understand their ability to navigate risk, manage risk, deliver results, raise the bar, all of those things. They can do these things. You're worth a gajillion dollars a year. But that is not the question. Are you with me? That is not the question that our members need answered. The question that our members need answered is, what can this company compensate me for fulfilling this role and responsibility in this geographic area? That is the answer that you need. You need to understand that, right? You need to know what that is. And you have to do that homework way early on. I'm going to tell you, you need to have done that before you ever enter in to your very first conversation with anybody that you're networking into that company. Because, Scott, this is what happens. You may be talking, you go, yeah, but Mike, I'm only talking to a talent acquisition manager. This is my first discussion with the company. Surely they're not going to talk about compensation, right? And you're going to get drug into this conversation. You're going to be upbeat, and you're going to have done a little bit of homework on the company. Hopefully you've done a lot of homework on the company. You understand what makes it tick. And then somebody's just going to go, hey, you know what, Scott, I really enjoyed our conversation. Hey, what are you looking for, compensation wise? I mean, they're just going to throw it out. They're just going to say, hey, tell us what you're looking for. And you're like, this is just our first conversation. And I'm like, yeah, I told you it was going to come up. Right? They want to know. That's the, are we in the same ballpark discussion? You wish?
Does it get
it's different. Remember, I told you our members, their value, it's a gajillion dollars a year.
Right.
Not many companies can pay you a gajillion dollars a year. You need to understand the company that you're talking to, what do they have the ability to compensate you for a typical role and responsibility that you're looking to fulfill in a specific geographic area? What is that number?
So I'm assuming that when they put these roles up, they have some sort of advertising, there's always a range.
Some do, not all.
Not all. Okay. So does that confuse the issue sometimes? Because is it never accurate, or is it,
companies are never going to tie their hands. And here's the thing our members need to know. I mean, I just saw a recent one, was working with an individual, and I think the range, no kidding, was listed from 130 to like 195. Like it was whoa, that's a pretty wide range, right? And so a company may look to fulfill a specific role or responsibility with a different talent pedigree. You with me? I mean, man, if I'm bringing in somebody with this much experience, I'm probably going to index higher, to the upper end of that range. But here's the thing you need to understand. What is that range? And I'm just going to ask you, what is that range representative of? I'm not.
It sounds like it would be based on, do you have a master's degree or something like that? I mean, at the end of the day, is
the attributes that may help you land in a different part of that range. But what I want individuals to understand is that is a base pay range. And that's how I want them to think about this. This is a base pay figure when individuals look at this, which is not the total compensation number that you may be the recipient of if you were to step in and fulfill this role. Are you with me? A base pay is just an annualized monthly stipend base pay figure. It may not include a signing bonus. It may not include a performance bonus. It may not include an annual incentive bonus. It may not include, a robust 401k matching option. It may not include a number of other direct or other indirect forms of compensation that will ultimately all roll up into your total compensation for that role. You with me? So when individuals step into these discussions early on, I want you to expect that discussion topic on compensation is going to come up. I want you to, two, understand why it's coming up. It's probably like, are we just in the same ballpark, right? And number three, I want members to think about this like the strategy in discussions like this is to not throw out a number. I would prefer that you don't throw out a range. I would prefer that you try to get the individual you're having a conversation with to talk more and you talk less. So you're going to say, well, Mike, how do I do that? I'm going to say, well, I want you to inject and pivot. So if you were asking me, Scott, if we're having a conversation, you say, well, Mike, I was wondering if you just might be able to tell me, what's the ballpark you're looking for, Mike? What are you looking for? I'm saying, hey, Scott, first off, I just want to say thanks for making the time to chat with me. Hey, next, again, I'm just really excited about the company and the role and responsibility. I think it's a great fit for a lot of the skills, right, that I'm bringing to the table. And I look forward to an opportunity to join the team. And, I love the conversation that you're bringing up here. I'm hoping you might be able to share with me, how has the company, Scott, previously valued this role and responsibility? And then take a sidestep and wait. And don't be so aggressive to solve their problems for them. In other words, I want to pull a little bit of information out. Hey, you tell me, how has the company previously, valued this role and responsibility? Now let's take it a step further. Maybe you come back and you go, well, Mike, the posted range was 130 to 195. And you know what? We valued this role based on, skill sets that individuals will bring to the table, for anywhere in between that entire range. Mike, what's your number? Hey, you know what, Scott? Again, I appreciate that insight. And before, I just want you to understand, it's just not about base pay just for me. I'm really excited about, what the role and responsibility total compensation package might look like. I was wondering if you might be able to share with me other direct or indirect forms of compensation that the company typically offers for a role and responsibility like this. You with me? So what are other forms of compensation just besides this base pay figure? And then take a step aside and try to tease this out of them. And we spend a lot of time, not only in our cohort, but some of our content. And if members are interested in having more conversations about this, reach out, because there is a skill in language on how you want to engage, right, ahead of time to get that individual to divulge more, and you to not just say, at first contact, hey, Mike, just tell me, what are you looking for? I'm looking for 155.7. Like, that's a horrible response. Like, never throw out a number, right? Always pivot, always try to tease more information out. Now, we jokingly refer to this with a lot of our members that resonates with them. I said, treat it like SEER school, right? Like, hey, I'm only going to get a little bit of information. I want you to give me a lot of information back. I'm only going to do a little bit of talking. I want you to do a lot of talking, right? But at the end of the day, you've got to read the body language. If somebody just comes up to you and says, dadgummit, Mike, listen, I am absolutely fed up with this conversation. What is your number? Right? And you can see that, they're getting a little frustrated. Then you've got to have a range. And the range that I want you to kind of put out is something that has been well researched on your end. And it encompasses a base pay range, right? A figure, never a figure, but you're going to offer up a range, but the range needs to encompass, right, that figure that you would be happy to receive as a base pay if you were to go to work for this company, right? And if you saw a recent posting that I made on LinkedIn, Scott, I don't know if you had a chance to look at it. I just posted it just the other day. And there is a lot of psychology around numbers and ranges. And we encourage our members to make it an odd range and odd specific numbers. And that carries with it, right, an intentional delivery of a message on, wow, this guy's really done his homework and he understands what's going on. So for example, you tell me, say, hey, Mike, look, dude, what are you looking for? Hey, Scott, I'm pretty sure that we could align for fulfilling the role and responsibility, as I understand it, as you're articulating it to me here, somewhere in the 155.7 to 163.7 range. Right? I throw out a range. I'm not going to commit to a number. And I want members to understand when you have this conversation, or if you get drug into that conversation as a last result only, if you get drug into that conversation, I want you to recognize that you're having a conversation around base pay only. That has nothing to do with what your total compensation might be. So typically, if you are in the same ballpark, that conversation is going to move on. Then you're going to have follow-on conversations. You're going to have follow-on conversations. And at some point in time, the discussion comes back to you in an offer letter. Say, hey, Mike, we've loved our conversations. Here, please review this. We're proud to extend to you, an offer for the role and responsibility of filling this role, right, for this man. And then you're probably going to see some figure in there that you talked about. But here's what members need to understand. That does not preclude you from then at that point negotiating signing bonus, negotiating, I don't know, if you live in Seattle, you better negotiate parking, your 401k matching percentage. Well, a lot of companies have a standard plan. We have seen some members negotiate that successfully to a higher percentage, and that's real money in your pocket. So at the end of the day, while you may have been the recipient of a $160,000 per year figure, your total compensation may drive that up another $30,000 or $35,000. You don't know what that's going to look like, right? All of these other revenue streams that you need to be prepared to negotiate as well. So that's a lot packed into, some quick dialogue here. What I would tell members is, here's the big takeaway. Before you ever have your first conversation, you better understand what your compensation goals are. You better understand, does that company have the ability to compensate you? Not what your value is, but does this company have the ability to compensate you to this level, right? And then understand the dialogue and delivery and discussion on how you're going to navigate that conversation to inspire them to talk more and you to talk less, right? So you can get smarter on what's going on. It really is important. Often I'm the recipient of phone calls from members that go, oh, Mike, I just had a conversation and they asked me what I wanted. And I go, well, what did you say? And I go, I told them a number, and I'm going, why did you do that? Why would you commit and lock yourself into something like that? Now, there are some ways that you can have a conversation around this and you can kind of come off of that. But my goodness, I would much rather script a plan forward where you're not having to undo that line of dialogue, right? It's just a lot easier. So expect it early on. So let me stop there.
Yeah, no, it sounds like the moral of the story is focus on that base salary range. So understanding that before you go into any conversation, so you aren't surprised. So you can at least know that there's a range, and then you can kind of, if they really hammer you home or hammer on you, that you kind of have your range that you're going to be okay with for that particular position, but not worry about all the benefits and the bonuses and the stuff that's going to come follow on. But be prepared for those conversations. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, have done the research to be comfortable with your own range, and that way you can move on from there instead of having to backtrack.
And, Scott, members will often come to us and they'll go, oh, that's great, Mike. Like, how do I research this? Well, you're going to have networking conversations, right, early on. So you've got to script that line of dialogue. And I look at networking conversations from an intel gathering perspective. What do I already know about the landscape that I'm pursuing? And what holes do I not know? And when I have a networking conversation, I want to fill those holes, right, with clarity, right, and have those conversations. The next thing I would tell members is this is at the heart of what Blue Water is trying to build here. We have a wealth of insight now into, compensation that companies are able and willing to extend members from the Blue Water Network. So there is no guesswork. Hey, come to us. Hey, Mike, I'm pursuing this company. What can I expect for compensation? And it's not going to be just a personal dialogue. Hey, I personally think it'll probably be something like this. No. I'm not. Nobody cares what Mike Wallace thinks. I don't even care what Mike Wallace thinks. I care about having the conversation going. Hey, look, based on the last 3 people that have come through Blue Water who have sought employment with that company at similar roles and responsibilities in that geographic area, I think, right, the company is willing to extend. Here's 3 data points, right? That's the kind of conversation I want to have. And so we can analytically step back and look at this and go, hey, I think that is a fair and competitive offer. Or, hey, you know what? I think you need to give us a call. Let's talk about how you're going to negotiate this, right? Now, there may be people out with companies that are saying, hey, Mike, you're making it hard for companies to hire talent. And what I would tell companies, and I have had this conversation with them in the past, treat them fairly. I mean, we educate our members. If the offer is good and fair and competitive, we're not going to squeeze a rock. I'm going to advise our members to go, look, hey, based analytically on these data points, that is a fair and competitive offer. I would think hard about trying to drive that to a higher level because that is a very fair and competitive offer based on these data analytics, right, that we have. And if it's not, then I'm going to say, look, we need to have a phone call. I'm going to recommend you to negotiate this. Happy to walk you through how to do that. But ultimately, the decision is yours. But it's an analytical decision at that point, right?
Yeah.
So, and we're excited to do that. And that's part of the Blue Water database. It just gets tighter and tighter and tighter month over month over month, right? Our members are excited to help us build that insight, right, as they find future successes that are out there, right? So we're excited about building that as well too. And again,
that's a huge value add with the Blue Water Digital because getting access to, again, it gives you the foundation just to go in and be like, all right, I'm not just completely blind. All right, what are you going to offer? That's what ends up happening.
Well, and that's a big frustration for a lot of us in the military. We all know what everybody else made, right? You just go to the post office, you can call up some, pay chart or whatever, and you go, okay, you're whatever over so many years. Okay, this is what your pay is. And you may get some flight pay and some special pays, but by and large, that's pretty much what it is.
Right.
That is not the same out there in this new world, right? That you're progressing into. That is not what that is. There are wide variances, right, in compensation, and maybe some for good reason, different experience-based, different talent-based, but individuals equally educated, equally experienced in a same role and responsibility, are they always going to be making the same pay? No, some negotiate better, some don't negotiate at all. That's business, right? That's, savvy hiring managers will always want to compensate their people fairly because they don't want to have to go through the hiring process again, right? They don't want disgruntled employees. But do they all do that? No, maybe some are compensated a little bit more, some are compensated a little bit less, right? And having that insight makes all the difference in the world, right? We like to say there's no fog of war, right? There's 20/20 visibility as you step onto the battlefield. And so That's what we're working hard here, Scott. But again, the takeaway for the conversation here today, and again, I got to get busy and write out this agenda because I want to have this conversation with you in more detail, because I want to put together, right, this video workshop for our members so that they can review the language on how to navigate this conversation. There is some art to this, right? It's not all just science. There are so many lessons learned. Here's just one that comes to the top of my mind. Hey, Scott, I want you to give me this much money, to me directly for me making this fill, right? Very first person, you give me this. That does not go over well. Much better delivered. Hey, Scott, I was hoping you might be able to tell me how the company has historically been able to compensate individuals making this fill. Like, let's separate this. This isn't your checkbook, right? It's not personal here. This is just business. But talking about it in a third person relationship helps distance that a little bit and does make a difference. I can tell you, I don't know what it is, having been a hiring manager and somebody coming to me directly and say, well, I want this. Can you give it to me? I'm like, hey, wait a minute. You're kind of making this a personal conversation here. And this isn't anything personal about this, right? We're either going to close this deal and we're going to do it maturely and professionally, and it's going to be this third person discussion. But it doesn't need to be drugged down into this personal dialogue, right? And I would encourage individuals to remember that as you're developing your pivoting strategy and the dialogue on how you're teasing out this information. Distance yourself, make it a little bit third person, if you will. So, but yeah, we got to get busy and crank that out, Scott. I got to make that and got to make that available for our members. So.
Yeah, let me know. Happy to do it. Awesome, Mike. No, that was very insightful, and I think we hit on a lot of aspects of the hiring process, especially around compensation. So that's good for today. I know next week we're heading up to DC.
Yeah, let's talk about some current events. You tell us about the event. You know it much better than I do, even though
there's actually, it turns out there's a lot of events going on next week in DC. There's AUSA, which is, I think, from the 14th to the 16th.
Right.
And I've been to one of those, and that's kind of crazy. Someone said hi to us. I don't see who the LinkedIn user is, but man, stay safe in Orlando.
Golly, no kidding. I know John Malfitano's stuck down there. I don't know if that's John stepping in there, but we've got some other Orlando folks down there. Not to kind of segue forward, but we're going to Orlando at the end of January to support career progression cohort down there for the group. So we're really excited about that. But yeah, be safe if you're down in Florida there.
Yeah, no, I was just down in Orlando last week at UCF for an event, but I did not stay around long. But so AUSA, which, if I had known about it, I was like, well, maybe we should have gone up a day earlier and checked that out. That's a crazy event. Have you ever been to one of those?
I have not been to that. In fact, I'm looking forward to this one we're going to next week, right?
Right. So, the AUSA is like 50,000 people. Giant trade show. They're just selling tanks, on the floor. It's weapons. It's like from the movies.
Yeah.
Guys selling new laser beams. I mean, it's
wild. My gosh. Yeah.
Probably not a bad place to set up a booth for US VetWealth, honestly. I mean, but you got to spend like $20,000 to get it. It's crazy. So, so that's military marketing for that one. And then the Service Academy Career Conference, the SAC, that's happening at the end of the week. I think the 17th and 18th.
Right.
That's over at the Gaylord, I believe. And then you and I are going in the middle of the week to the Service Academy Global Entrepreneurship Summit.
Yeah.
I think I got all those words out.
Looking forward to it.
2024. So that is a combination of a previous Academy grad-based thing called the Service Academy Global Summit. But then West Point had done some entrepreneurship-based. Their AOG had done some stuff over a few years. And I guess they've kind of combined those, made it for all academies. It's called the Entrepreneurs Summit. I mean, it's a networking event. Anybody's invited. Sure. And I mean, I think the opportunity there is there's a lot of small business owners, a lot of successful grads that show up there, and so those are the kind of people to network. Skip above the hiring manager, potentially go meet the actual owners of the businesses and investors, and learn about entrepreneurship a little bit. So Mike and I are going to be there since we dabble in entrepreneurship ourselves. In a way.
Well, it's already proving like it's going to be attended by a lot. Just after you and I talked about it the other day, and we kind of downloaded a few of the attendees, right? I reached out. Shelby Mounts is going to be there, right? Joe Rizicchia is coming up from Texas. He's with, is it Keegan Adams, I guess, or Adams Keegan? They're one of the headliners for the event, so he'll be there, and he's already come back. So I know a lot of those attendees. So man, it's just all about meeting more people, making sure everybody's up to speed on what it is we're doing, right? And
if you are a grad, it is an opportunity to speak directly with your AOG reps who are, in all the spaces of all the resources that they can offer, similar to what you did with Blue Water, going up to the Alumni Association and talking up there. So maybe you can reconnect with those guys. They'll probably be there.
Absolutely.
As well. But so if you're there, if you're going to be there, if you're thinking about it, that's at the Fairfax Marriott on the 15th, 16th, and 17th. So Mike and I will be there the first 2 days. So stop by, say hi.
Yeah, love it. Good. Hey, just real quick, just for all the listeners out there, we're still working on 2025 schedule. In fact, we opened up a couple more events. If you can believe this, Scott, really our first quarter 2025 is already kind of filling up. January is pretty much a unit event with Knock TSD down in Orlando. Our February cohort, which is back here in the Norfolk area. In fact, I'm looking at the whiteboard right now. We have 2 open seats left on that already. We're looking at Navy Region Northwest out at Kitsap near Seattle, right, in March. We're also having conversations with Navy Region Southeast, right, down in Jax, April or May timeframe. I just opened up the July cohort for next year, if you can believe it. We're back to Tailhook in August. September is already committed to, again, by the Naval Academy Alumni Association. We're doing another event up there. And then that takes us already back to, October, November, December of next year. So 2025 schedule is already coming up, and we generate standby lists all the time. And what I just try to tell members, don't wait. Find an open spot, get your foot in the door, register for one of these events because they fill quickly. Like I said, we've got 2 open seats left in Norfolk for February 2025. So if you're interested, I would say register sooner than later, right? Because they will fill. And we take small groups. It's a small group high touch, as you know, as we're building the network and continuing to kind of, work with our members to their next success. So, but yeah, that's a little bit about us. Hey, we got a Warriors Tap House event, networking event today over at Warriors Tap House of General Boost Boulevard. Dave Culler, got a Culler. They take great care of us over there. And I think I'll see you there today with that, Scott, right? You going to make time to make it over?
Yeah, I should be there.
Yeah, Steve Weeman will be in play too. And looks like we've got, last count here, about 20 plus individuals registered. So it should be a good group and just kind of good, way to kind of connect with everybody. So look forward to seeing you this afternoon.
No, perfect. No, awesome. Well, that's a good place to call it. Yeah, we'll see everybody this evening. And thanks for joining us. And we won't.
Thanks, everybody. All right.
We'll be traveling next week. But hey, maybe we'll pop in live, on our phones from the event.
I love it.
Show
yeah, we can do that just real quick. Yeah.
Yes, why don't we do that?
All right.
But
good.
All right, man. Hey, if you haven't, go over to YouTube, subscribe to the Military Retirement Blueprint.
Yes.
So you can check out all these other videos that Mike and I have done, and other content that might be helpful during your military retirement process. And we're gonna add more stuff there. Mike, looking forward to doing the next training session with you and getting those
love it
up to your members.
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate it.
All right, man.
All right. Cheers.
Take care.